Oh, hello. Welcome to another video. It's time for an episode of Kill Team Shower Thoughts, and this time we're asking the question, does the next edition of Kill Team need list building? So I'm going to give you a little history lesson, first of all. Back when Kill Team 21 came out, right, even though obviously a lot of people were celebrating, some folks were deeply mourning the loss of their dudes. And I think most famously, the person who soured on Kill Team 21 the quickest, who'd been really all in on Kill Team 18, was this guy. Not Ron Swanson, above that, okay, Uncle Adam of Tabletop Minions fame. Now, I used to be an avid subscriber of Tabletop Minions, precisely because he did really cool hobby focused, like kind of casual dad-ish, right, Kill Team content. And I was gutted when he said he wasn't following into Kill Team 21. And this isn't a bear the man no ill will, this isn't a hit piece, okay? He just didn't want to play the game, didn't want to cover the game, and it would absolutely be joyless to talk about and cover a game that you don't actually like or play on your channel, and I get that, and that's fine. But it was tough, and it was the same with, there's another channel I used to really like, it's not still going anymore, because Andy at Blackjack Legacy got a job working as the PR guy for Mantic Games. But Blackjack Legacy, like the first video I watched of his was something like rules. It was either a Kill Team video or it was an Underworlds video, and it was like rules that players get wrong. And I followed him for Kill Team and Underworlds content. I remember him being a big Kill Team content guy for Kill Team 2018 as well. Talked about it a lot in a really pretty casual way, but he did talk about it a lot. And then he just went right off it, right shortly after Kill Team 21 came out. Now, I don't remember him having an explosive, like, in the same way that Tabletop Minions did. I don't remember him being like, I've gone off it for precisely this reason. I'm just putting it in there because I was reflecting on like what I used to enjoy back in the days of Kill Team 18, right? You know, the only YouTuber that I'm sure there was some more out there that are still going, but the only YouTuber that I was following from the Kill Team 2018 days into 21 is good old Glass Half Dead, right? Because some of these other big beasts, they didn't want to do the game. And they didn't want to do it because, back in Kill Team 2018, you built your team using these weirdo things called points, right? And you could select your characters from a wide selection of models, like belonging to your entire faction. So you'd be like, I'm playing Eldar, right? Just the whole of Eldar, so it wouldn't be like separated into different kind of little sub-factions. And you use these points like a currency to purchase the different models for your team. And so when you run out of points, that was the models that you had. And so teams, this is from Major Tom, who played back then. This is from the Discord. And this is like a typical Eldar kill team from Kill Team 2018. So we look at this, we can see, we've got one Howling Banshee, one Striking Scorpion, we've got one like Dire Avengers Exarch, we've got a big old cannon. I don't know Eldar weapon names, I'm really sorry. We've got a cannon, we've got two separate special weapons, we got two close combat guardians, and we got one guardian with a shuriken catapult, presumably because we had our limited number of our points left, and we just got the shuriken catapult guy, right? Being a bit silly. Of course, I know what points are, but hey, there might be some people that started their whole hobby journey with Kill Team 2021 and literally have no idea what a point is, right? So it's not actually that silly. So I've got the rules here from Kill Team 2018 about how, just to give you an idea, how kill teams used to be made. So for your kill team to be battle forged, that used to be the terminology, you must adhere to the following restrictions. Your kill team must consist of at least 3 models, no more than 20 models. It must include one and only one leader. It can include up to 3 other specialists, and can't include more than the maximum of any particular model. So there were maximums. Can't include more than the maximum of any particular model as detailed on the datasheet, and all the models must share a faction keyword, right? And the factions were broad. It's not like we have today where like Kazakin and Vetguard are different. there would just be the Imperial Guard. The factions would tie up at 1-to-1 with 40k codexes, right? And then you had 100 points, and you had your model and the war gear on the model. So, like, often a gunner wouldn't be a separate datasheet. It would just be your basic trooper datasheet, and then you'd pay the points, right, to upgrade the las gun into a plasma gun, right? And so you'd spend the points, and then you'd have your force. Now, when Kill Team 2021, as I'm sure everyone watching this knows, came out, the individual teams became much more limited. There's a lot fewer choices to be made. And it's pretty understandable that people wanted to continue using their old stuff. They now have stuff that's useless to them. They can't... You could just keep playing the old edition. Like everyone always says it, but nobody ever actually does it, right? Because people like to be part of the thing. So it did leave people in a bit of an awkward spot. Now, me, I've been told that I have a unreasonably relaxed attitude, I'll put it that way, to editions change and, your collection of models is no longer a valid army. You need to add things, remove things, retire things. From my perspective, having been playing Games Workshop games, I mean, I'm 37, and I picked up my first edition of 40k. It was 40k second edition, and I was in, like... I think I was 10, right, when I first set foot in Games Workshop. So, 27 years of playing this game. Like, I don't remember an edition change where I didn't have to retire some models or pull the arms off models or glue on different guns. For me, it seems really perfectly normal. But I do understand that apparently I'm odd for thinking that way, and that normal people are really concerned when the miniatures that they've invested in and painted on hobby time on and stuff like aren't used. I mean, you've got to remember, when I was at secondary school, we used to play Necromunda with the little pewter Necromunda figures, right? And you'd build them and you'd paint them. And I'm not even joking. You'd build them and you'd paint them and stuff, right? And then you'd get, like, you play a game, and then you'd get, you'd roll on the rare trade table, and then if you were really lucky, right, you'd get, like, a power fist, let's say. And then what would you do, right? You'd get your little metal figure that you'd paint it. This is what we used to do as kids. And then you'd grab your snips and you'd clip off the arm holding the power sword, right? Stick the painted power sword. Try and do it as cleanly as possible, right? Don't want to waste. Stick the power sword arm in the bits box, right? File down the little stub. Grab yourself a plastic Space Marine power fist, like drill it, pin it on there, undercoat the power fist, paint it up to match the rest of the figure. Like, that's what we used to do, right? We used to literally be quite happy during the course of a campaign to cut and chop and change and convert our models, because we didn't have the money. It wasn't like, well, I'll just put him to one. Like, nowadays I was playing Necromunda, it'd be like, well, I'll just put him to one side and I'll go and buy another box and then I'll build a different identical guy with a different gun, because now I have the money to just buy spares, right? But as a kid, it was like, yeah, chop. So maybe that's like affected me, and I'm just far more like happy that the rules change. So of course the models that you want to use change. I'm getting sidetracked, but I am trying to realise in myself that apparently that makes me weird. Kill Team 18 list building was really bad, right? And so I do tend to think, and I've said before, that getting rid of list building and the points, right, was one of the best things they did for Kill Team, because Kill Team 2018 list building was really, really bad. So this up here, I found this on Reddit, right? Nobody on my Discord was willing to own up to owning a Kill Team like this one. This was what they call Imperial Guard Plasma Spam. So this is 4 Imperial Guardsmen with plasma guns, 2 Tempestus Scions with plasma guns, 2 Tempestus Scions with hotshot volley guns, an Imperial Guardsman comms fellow, and a sergeant with a las pistol and a walking stick, right? And like, this was what people would do, because like I said, that even though some data sheets were limited, the basic trooper data sheet wasn't limited. And the plasma gun was just an upgrade that you paid for, because it wasn't a 10th edition where you pay points for the unit, but the upgrades are all free. It was proper full on granular points, like we'd have to say now 30k style points or old world style points, where every every whistle and bauble costs points. So not like 40k and Age of Sigmar are now, where they have kind of points, but not really, but proper full-on old-school granular points, right? It was like that, okay? So you just bought the plasma gun as an upgrade for the basic Imperial Guardsman. And the plasma gun was the best thing. I'm alluding here, I've got another little screenshot of plastic toilets. Because there's I don't even think it's famous. There's a sketch I love from an old British sketch show called Not the 9 O'Clock News, right? Which is Rowan Atkinson. It was one of the first things that Rowan Atkinson was in, right? Everybody knows who Rowan Atkinson is. I think Mr. Bean and so on, Blackadder and all these things. And he came in and he's trying to put together a bathroom. It's like a bathroom showroom, and he's trying to put together a bathroom. People are going to come to his house and give him this fitted bathroom, and he puts all these things. I'll link the sketch in the description, but he's trying to put all these things in his bathroom, and then he keeps kind of making the salesman say, oh, but that's not as useful as a toilet. Toilet is and he has a point. A toilet is the most useful thing in a bathroom, right? Because if someone was to ask you what element in your bathroom can you not live without for a day, you'd pick the toilet. Like, everybody would like to clean their teeth and have a shower, but if you had to go without for a week, it would be a bit gross, but you'd be fine. If somebody said no indoor plumbing for a week, you'd be in panic mode. So, you got this thing where he starts putting down all the little toilets and going, oh yeah, not actually as useful as a toilet though, is it? And taking out the other things, putting more and more toilets, until it doesn't look like a bathroom anymore. It looks like a weird toilet temple. And that's the problem. This kill team doesn't look like an Imperial Guard veteran squad anymore. It looks like a weird plasma gun temple, right? So you mustn't allow people to take too much of a good thing, because they will, and it just ends up being silly, right? There you go. So I have a little old man rant for a minute, just indulge me, right? This is a lad, he's entitled The Internet Ruins Everything, which obviously I don't totally believe. I am a computer science teacher, I like the internet, I have a YouTube channel and all the rest of it, but it's worth pointing out to people who are maybe younger, or who haven't been in the hobby for a long time. It didn't always used to be this way. When I started in the hobby, when I was 10 years old, I was in primary school, 1996 or 97, I want to say. We didn't super have the internet. Like, we got the internet. I think I'd been in Warhammer for a year before I got the internet in my house, but even then it was like the 1997 internet, so there weren't websites with pictures because they would take too long to load. And there were websites, but there just weren't that many, and there wasn't this refined thing. And so most armies actually, they looked, I've taken this from the Sisters of Battle Codex, armies generally look like this. You'd have two squads, this case of sisters, but tactical marines or whatever. You'd have a character, right? And then maybe you'd have a couple of tanks, or you'd have a dreadnought and a tank, or, you'd have a couple of individual things. And that's what the armies looked like in all the books. If you went into a Games Workshop store, that's what the the armies would look like. And actually, the back then in the 90s, the managers were really, they were actually really interested in shepherding people down a certain way of looking at the hobby. I have an almost visceral memory of a young kid. It wasn't me, because I never played. I never played these things, but it was someone else that was playing Blood Angels, and they're in the store, and I was in the store at the same time. We were kids, and he bought a tactical squad, and he was kind of asking for advice on what to get next. He was like, I quite fancy Commander Dante, right? And the guy was like, well, what else do you have? Well, I bought this tactical squad. And the staff member, in a jovial way, but basically thundered across the store, like, Commander Dante does not lead a single tactical squad into battle. Like, actively, in a way you wouldn't get today, because today they just want to make the earlier. You buy the expensive card, off you go, fill your boots. Like, really trying to steer this child away from making a list that would be seen as, we used to call it beardy. I understand in America they quite often you prefer to use the word cheesy, right? But there was this real concept of, if you were someone who just took the most powerful stuff. That was like a real social faux pas. I know it sounds weird. That was like a real social faux pas in Warhammer. Like, you were seen as beardy or cheesy, right? Or cheap, or whatever it is. You know, whatever you want to call it. Okay, and gradually over time with the internet, the mentality shifted. I'm not saying it's a terrible thing, but people who want to get into a game look online and they look, well, what's winning, what does an effective 2,000 point Sisters of Battle army look like, and then they'll just buy that. And somehow, I've always said a degree of net listing is understandable, and I always say that Games Workshop does have a fundamental problem. Like, if you're a new player and you buy a box of Imperial Guard, and you look at these special weapons, you've got Flamey, you've got Plasma Gun, you've got Melter Gun, like, you want to know which one to glue on that's best, because you've just invested the 30 odd quid or 40 quid or whatever they are now for the Technoplastic Guardsman. You've got the special weapons. You can only have one, and you want somebody to tell you, actually, yeah, glue on the Plasma Gun, right? They all cost the same amount of points now as well. So you do need someone to say, hey, glue this one on, or you're kind of wasting your cash. That's definitely a thing. My favourite example from the last edition was Intercessors with their bolt guns, where there were 3 different kinds of bolt guns, and there was a right choice and 2 wrong choices. And it wasn't that clear from the rules if you were a novice player which one you wanted, but if you glued on the wrong one, again, you're potentially wasting money. Like, I really do have a problem with unit level. I'd be happier if we went down the Age of Sigmar road and most units didn't have unit level customization, right, for that reason, so that you can't build your kit wrong. I think, as much as other people probably don't think this is a good thing, but those same people probably don't think I'm totally wrong when I say I think that's probably the way Games Workshop's going to go. I know you don't like it, but it's probably the way Games Workshop's going to go. Anyway, not what the video's supposed to be about. The point I want to make here is, everybody started net listing. I remember the terminology actually came from Magic the Gathering and Yu-Gi-Oh! And things like that. People used to call it net decking, didn't they? And you got all these terminology like what deck are you running? What deck are you piloting? What army are you running? What army are you piloting? Because everybody would have there would be, for the longest time, there were these meta lists for these different games, whether it was Warhammer or Magic the Gathering, whatever it was. And there were these were the preordained competitive lists that you would play. Now, actually, I want to cool my jets for a second because, hey, 40k 10th edition, the lights have I have smart bulbs in my house, so I'm sure somebody's playing a merry jape on me and has turned off my light for some reason. That's fantastic. Anyway, I want you to respect the fact that I paused the recording so that I didn't talk to your Google Home device. Now, what was it? Yes. So, 40k 10th edition is actually in a pretty good place, right? The rule of 3 limits, and it's a core part of the game, and it limits the number of toilets, if you like, that you can take, right? You have to take a pretty mixed army in 10th edition, and if you look up, I did look up for this video, tournament winning Sisters of Battle, that's the army I play, and know about what does the tournament winning Sister of Battle list. Obviously, more miniatures than this, because the other thing Games Workshop's done is massively inflate the number of their products that you need to buy in field to play. Like, this is not a competitively sized army. This is like a starter box now, or, well, starter box would only give you the 1 tank probably, but there's basically a starter level force now and not a whole army, but that's a different issue. That's just the number of models on the table have really crept up since 2nd edition. But the point is, like, actually they don't look that much different from a logical extension of this, because 10th edition has some, pretty straightforward, but it does limit what you can have. So you have to have a character. There are things that are defined as epic heroes. They have to be unique. You can only have 3 of one kind of thing, unless it's battle, like really basic troops, then you can have up to 6 of them, right? And I think if this had been applied to 2nd edition, it would have been like, oh, you can take 3 battle line, you can probably only take 1 of each other datasheet, right? But then the size of the game went up. So there will be people saying, look, you've convinced me that the particular variety of list building that they had for Kill Team 2018 was bad, because that Guard Plasma list is an abomination against everything that people stand for, right? But that's, people say to me, Phil, you can't just say that points are bad and list building's bad, right? Because 40k 10th edition is doing it reasonably well. And I know a lot of people don't like 10th edition, but what I'm saying, to be really clear about what the fact-based thing that I'm asserting, is, if you look at tournament-winning 40k armies today, they're not just spamming all the same thing, right? And in many cases, they aren't even spamming 3 of things. They will take 2 of effective things, occasionally 3, but they're not. They look like armies in the lore, which has not been true for 40k for the whole of all the editions going backwards. Armies have not always looked like the lore suggests they should look. So 10th is producing balanced looking armies. So surely we can have sensible limits on things and have points, and that would let us express ourselves with our collections and use our dudes again. And maybe Major Tom could field his Eldar team. And then, just to counter that, so I want to say sometimes and often, I guess, that the spam is the point. And what I mean by that is, there's a close friend of mine, big supporter of the channel, been a member since he could be a member. He's on the Discord, name of Rob Ross. Feel free to at him and say, hey, you're famous, you're in the last video, look, there's a picture of him right there. He loves Deathwing, and for as long as I've known him, he's loved the Deathwing, and he's played as far as the rules have allowed him, and it's been a bit kind of wibbly at different points in 40k about how actually whether you can do a pure Deathwing army. He's played Deathwing as pure as possible, and sometimes in some editions of the game, actually it's turned out that that's been really, really powerful, and playing against it has been kind of like running into a wall head first, because the thing with a spam list, or sometimes called a skew list, if you present a lot of all one thing to your opponent, right, and then if your opponent has a balanced list, and then you take out the things that can deal. You take out, in this case, the plasma cannons, I guess, that they've taken, or whatever they have that can deal with what you've got. Then the rest of the game is just you grinding out the win against their stuff that can't really kill your stuff effectively, because it's like anti-tank killing one Terminator really dead, or it's anti-light infantry stuff that's not got anything really that it wants to shoot at, that's bouncing off all of your armor. And that's why skew lists can be powerful. Other times, it's been really, and this is why I'm obviously not accusing Oro of being a power gamer, because he wasn't doing it to win games. At other times, the Terminators have been totally overcosted and totally pillow-fisted, so you've been able to just run around the small number of Terminator squads that were there, taking the objective. I mean, I generally couldn't, because I'm not very good at 40k, but one could, right? Take the objectives and win that way. And so, Oro isn't doing it to win games, and there's a lot of people in a similar boat. I myself have told this story before, years and years and years ago. I had a Slaneshi-themed Chaos Demon army back when the Chaos Demons Codex, really, the norm was to play mixed, right? And then there was a book came out, and Slanesh became the ridiculous, filthy, powerful way to play, and people didn't like playing it, but my friends all tolerated it, because at that time they knew, this is the same list Phil was running under the last codex when it was trash, right? And so if you're playing with friends, and friends know, well, they really like this theme, going back further than that, even as far back as 2nd edition, a really old friend of mine used to play an Imperial Guard artillery company that was basically 9 basilisks. And again, was he playing that to just win games? No, he was playing that because he thought basilisks were cool. Right? So it's really hard, because sometimes the spam is the point. So then you say, well, we're going to put list building in, but we're going to limit spam, and there's a whole demographic of people that really wanted list building that are like, oh, well, you've put list building in, but I can't take a load of stuff that's already similar, but that was my theme. And because quite often list building is wanting to theme, and in war games generally, when we say the word theme, we're talking about taking a lot of similar stuff. I mean, I'm reminded of, I've not got a slide for it, but I'm going to really briefly talk about War Machine. Not the current edition of War Machine, because honestly I got no idea about the current edition of War Machine. The previous edition of War Machine, one of the biggest complaints I heard about that was it had something called theme lists, where basically you took a load of stuff that was narratively similar and similar in game terms broadly, right? And you got bonuses for taking your units from that limited pool. And then in more than one example, the theme list happened to be stuff that was actually, because you were being encouraged to take a skew list, actually just taking that stuff was pretty mechanically powerful, and you were getting benefits on top. So suddenly, everyone's playing these theme lists, right? And it's it's a tension that I don't think is often acknowledged, right? Power gamers and narrative players are often wanting to do exactly the same thing, which is take lots of similar units, right, and put them in a pile for completely different reasons, but they want to do the same thing. So I'm not sure who's served then by like list building, but list building that explicitly has loads of limits on being able to take stuff that is similar. And my contention would be that from a narrative perspective, Kill Team is actually better at telling a story, as long as they're telling one of the stories that you want to tell. Now, so what I mean by this is that almost all of the bespoke kill teams are tightly themed squads that spam a lot of similar data sheets, if you like, right? They're all guys with the same kind of armor profile and the same kind of rules, and they work well together thematically. But they're comparatively few options. The number of really powerful guns that you can take is quite tightly controlled, so they can be really easily balanced. And so on paper, modern kill team should actually scratch the edge of, I want a kill team that is narratively consistent, because I would argue all of the kill teams are narratively consistent, but the difference is Games Workshop's controlling the narrative. So if you play Navy Breaches, your Navy Breach team really doesn't have as much on it that makes it your dudes. They are just some Navy Breaches. Then again, the Deathwing aren't super your dudes, are they? They are a thing. They're an established thing from the lore, right? To go back to some of the Eldar builds that you'd see like Court of the Young King builds. Again, cool and possible with list building, but you didn't actually invent the Court of the Young King. It's not something that you come up with. It's just one of the things that Games Workshop's done. And I guess there is a difference, isn't there, between having the whole faction, like the whole of Eldar or the whole of Imperial Guard, and picking the things you want, and maybe, like the Court of the Young King, right, it conforms to a piece of lore that Games Workshop haven't explicitly come to address, and that feels more like something that you're doing. Or maybe you invent your own lore, like you're playing with the Imperium, but in your head it's like an Inquisitional warband and they're all converted and you pick different things. I get that. I get it's not the same. I do. It's telling a story, it's not telling your story, but then we're not always telling original stories. I'm just not sure. Right? But I do think Modern Kill Team is probably better than telling a story, because what's the story of Guard Plasma Spam? This is my Guard squad. They found a crate of plasma guns. Now they're going to kill. I mean, it's difficult, right? I think that Modern Kill Team has a variety at the top. Right now, the factions are less variable within themselves. People tend to think there's one way, generally, to run each faction, which makes the factions quite easy to balance, right? Because everybody's doing the same sorts of things, so you only have to make a few changes to get the power levels quite tweaked, right? So I think Kill Team is a very balanced game. It does have some issues, but there's not millions of issues, right? So so you get this thing, every Orc Commandos team tends to be similar, but you don't go to an event and it's like 50% of the field is commandos, right? And so you have this kind of thing that people say that, well, with open list building and granular points, yeah, you've got the capacity for more variety because your team doesn't have to be similar or even the same as anybody else's team. But in fact, you'd go to an event, wouldn't you? And I think what you'd see a more limited selection of competitive builds popularized by YouTubers. Like, we as a class need to take some of the blame for what would inevitably happen, right? But we put out things, not me, because I'm not a very competitive, but if you think of somebody like John from Wales, right? He put out a video and this is how I run Vet Guard, and everybody would write that down and they'd go and buy those models, and you go to a tournament and you'd see loads of that team, right? And I think actually bizarrely, having wide open list building and granular points would actually probably result in less variety at events, because the game would become harder to balance. And that's my basic thought on the issue. And even when they did balance it, and then the online commentary would go, okay, given that balance update, the new filth is this thing, and then you go to an event and that will be the thing, right? Because the hobby lag from Kill Team isn't that much, right? You got to paint 15 guys, 16 guys maximum, maybe as few as 6. So you can meta chase, you can just wait and go, oh, this is the new hotness, right, I'll go and buy that and I'll paint it and I'll have the new thing. So I don't think I don't truly understand what you win with list building. And another argument that I've seen floating around, this is one that Zimbad talks about quite a bit sometimes, is the joy of disruption. Okay, so we got a nice picture of Ace here with I've put a little crown on. He said that other pro players are available, Ryan Slater and so on. There are other people I could have selected, but we talk about Ace because there's a particular reason for talking about Ace in a minute. Okay, so maybe you're one of the top players of all of Kill Team. One of the people that I've just mentioned that people look up to and go, well, they're really top of their game. And it's true that if you're one of the top players, wide open list selection differently gives you another tool with which to win games. Because if you know, and with wide open list selection, that you would know that most people are playing the 3 to 4 competitive builds that YouTubers have told them to play, right? That gives you a lot of space to kind of develop and refine something new and secret, right? And take it to an event and win. And you have, you've analysed the meta and gone, okay, everybody's playing Plasma Spam or Court of the Young King, or whatever it would be. What do I build that counters the meta builds? What do I do to flex my, above average ability at this game, right? How do I leverage my above average understanding of this game to make a list that can beat the things that I know, because I'm also participating in the online community, that I know are out there, right? And then, of course, what happens is all the YouTubers out there, like me included, would make YouTube videos like, wow, you'll never believe what won Warhammer Fest. We sit down and analyse Ace's list and the war gear that he took, right? And then all the people would be like, oh, I'm going to go and buy one of those and one of these and one of those and one of these. And the cycle begins again, right? And as a YouTuber, sounds quite nice, doesn't it? Because it's a whole genre of video that I get to make over and over and over again, right? Every time oh wow, out of nowhere, totally disrupting the meta, it's Snotling, Pump Wagon, Extravaganza, So, yeah, but does that actually make the game better? It generates quite a lot of froth up here around the pro players and the people who have an interest in commenting on what the pro players are doing and the people that are following that. It creates a lot of noise, a lot of froth, and a lot of buzz, and that's good. But does it make tournaments less accessible, to the casual dads? Remember what I talked about a couple of videos ago, the different kinds of people that play war games, and suddenly if you've got this game that I would say would possibly, potentially, skirmish games are uniquely vulnerable, aren't they, to degenerating into meta chasing? Because if you play 40k and you've got 2,000 points of Sisters of Battle and you've painted them, and Sisters of Battle aren't very good at the moment, You're not just going to pick up an Imperial Guard army, because that's not a casual, that's like, well, I'm going to spend like £400 on the models, and I'm going to build them, and I'm going to paint them, and that's going to be like months of my life to paint like a finished 2,000 point. You're just going to keep grinding away with the sisters, pick up a few different units, and hope that the balanced data slate lets you come good, right? But with a skirmish game, that has a really easy potential for degenerating pretty quickly into, I'll just buy the thing that the top player won the last tournament with, build it and paint it and send it out, right? And this already happens to an extent. This is why I chose Ace here, because Ace won, I forget which one it was, one of the Nottingham Kill Team events with Phobos, and then you looked at the statistics, and suddenly there were all these people out of nowhere going, oh yeah, we can play Phobos, right? Where did that come from, lads? It was people that were following the online meta, and one of the best players, if not the best player of Kill Team, I think he is technically the best player, but he's certainly in the top 10 by any measure, right? People just followed him. But it makes the whole thing less accessible to the casual dad who doesn't have the time to chase meta and is going online and hearing in every single video, oh, if you want to have a chance at a tournament, you need to play one of these 3 lists. And they're like, well, I've got Marines. Marines are trash now. No, you won't win. And you think, oh, well, I won't actually buy. Like, it might not even be true, but if it's what people are saying, a lot of casual dads are going to go, I'm not going to bother. I'm not going to pay to go to an event and stay in a hotel overnight and get, spend time away from my wife and my kids to go over there. I'm just going to get drummed because I don't have the time and the money to continually buy whatever's competitive, right? So I think whilst I understand the argument that it gives pro players another way to demonstrate their superiority and their skill, right? To try and break metas by crafting something that can go in there and really prize the meta apart. It's funny, I don't actually see the pro players crying out for list building. It tends to be those narrative players that want to be able to express themselves more fully, and then occasionally you get people going, oh, won't somebody think of the pro players? Like, oh, we'd have a much more engaging, like, high-level scene if there was more list building, because we could all make loads of content based on the lists that were being built, but there's not actually, now correct me if I'm wrong, but I haven't actually seen an Ace or a Ryan Slazer or any of these people say, oh, you know what will make this game better, loads of list building. And if that is the opinion out there somewhere, please do correct me in the comments, please. I don't want to just be wrong on the internet. That would be a shame. But I've not seen it. Now, what I will say, I'll give some ground. I do think list building at the table, I'm a big fan of list building at the table. So I do think the roster limit needs to go. The limit on 20 models, what's the point? Absolutely pointless. The best thing that you can say about the roster limit, I guess, I will concede, is it does make the game potentially quicker, because there's fewer potential decision points when you're choosing your list, right? So maybe instead of choosing your list in 10 seconds, maybe you want to take 30 seconds, 45 seconds to choose your list. But I don't foresee it being a massive issue, right? I'd remove it. Let people roster 100 models if they want to, right? Most kill teams can't roster that many usefully. I'd also let Legionaries players roster as many marks as they wanted to. I would probably, if it's important for balance, then you keep the limit for what you can actually play in the kill team if that's what you want to do. But I would not limit them on the roster to what marks of chaos they can have. That seems pointlessly punishing, right? And so would that go some way to create that technical feeling that there's that bigger element of list building, but actually it's more like swapping from a highly defined sideboard when you're playing the game, and having that kind of deeper sideboard can bring you some of the gameplay advantages and nuance of list building. It doesn't help the narrative players one jot, right? But I think it's something you could do if you felt like you wanted to have that little extra avenue for the really good players to distinguish, like an extra little bit of metagame, like reacting. Just take the shackles off that a little bit and let people react with all their tools to, well, this is the mission and this is what my opponent's faction is declared as, right? While we're talking about that, I can't resist. I'm going to briefly talk about Malif. Don't turn off. It's only one slide that's not about Kill Team. You've sat here for nearly 40 minutes just because I mentioned a different game. Just wait it out for a second. I promise I'm making a point, right? So before Kill Team 2018 came out, my game of choice was a game called Malif from Weird Miniatures. This is a selection of my Malif. I don't think I actually have these anymore. I don't know where they ended up. Did I sell them? Maybe. Are they somewhere under the bed wrapped in tissue paper? Maybe. But these were my Malif miniatures, a small selection of my Malif miniatures. And Malif Weird Miniatures is still going, right? It's been new editions and reinvented. So I don't know if the particular rule that I'm about to mention is still true, but it's certainly there were a lot of rules like that, right? Because Malif had a mechanic that I really loved where you declared your overarching faction to start the game. So my overarching faction was Neverborn. Now, don't think about Neverborn as being like the same as saying I'm playing Kazakin. It's more akin to saying, oh, I'm playing the Imperium, right? It was like an overarching faction. And then from within the Neverborn, there were like, what I want to say, either 6 or 8 potential masters that you could pick from. And it was a bit like War Machine, where the leader of your crew, as it was called, was like a named character in the fiction of the... So it's different from Kill Team. The leader was like a character level thing, and it was the leader of... It was a named character that had done things in the story. And then you picked your team, which were actually tended to be a little bit smaller than Kill Teams by and large, but about the same size, depending on the builds, right? Depending on, with the information of the scenario you were playing, the terrain layout, you'd have the terrain layout, you'd know the scenario, and you'd know what faction your opponent had declared. So you'd know, for example, to put it in 40k terms, he'd know you were playing Imperium, and you'd know that you were playing Eldar, right? And then you'd pick your teams, and yes, you'd pick a master, and there'd be certain units that were designed to work with certain masters, although often there wouldn't be many. There weren't many rules saying this can only be taken with that, right? And there was certainly a lot of things, like the doppelganger down here, the lady with the purple towel, who was a big utility piece, who could be taken with any, because she's like a shapeshifter, right? That's her thing. So she could be taken with any master and do loads of different work. So that was a thing, and you didn't have to engage with that mechanic. I know a lot of people who played it at the time who just had their crew that they were going to play, and they didn't roster, and they just turned up and went, cool, here's my crew. But I myself, because I get quite deep into most things if I get into them at all. I had one of these KR cases, that size there on the screen, a proper decent square size thing. I would take like easily 100 miniatures to play Malif, and then use 9 of them, right? But I'd sort of get the scenario, and I go, oh, in this scenario, I tend to want this master. What's he playing? There are no obvious counters, so I'll take... And then in my head, I'd be like, well, if I'm taking this master, I'll tend to take these things, and then maybe take a different utility piece depending on what I thought my opponent was likely to pick. And it did 2 things, right? It was quite a little cerebral mini-game that you could opt out of if you wanted to, of picking your thing. But it also meant, right, and I did this for years because I was kind of out of the Games Workshop bubble, you could play Malif and you could collect and paint and feel like you had a useful use for an army's worth of miniatures while still playing a skirmish game. Because one of the biggest problems with skirmish games in general is if you're somebody that likes to hobby, right, you could hobby a Kill Team to perfection and then you're done, and it's a very quick project as far as hobby goes. And then you want to paint more stuff, so you just end up doing loads of Kill Teams, or you move into an army game, or you do something else, but then you can't use all your stuff together, and maybe you would be better off sticking with just one team. This was a really elegant way where you could, Malif could be the total of your hobby, because you just build up this massive collection, and it was like having a massive sideboard to choose from. So, am I saying that Kill Team should adopt this and should play this way? No, probably not. because it wasn't designed from the ground up to do it, and it runs into the problem with like, oh wait, we'll make an Imperial faction and a Chaos faction, and we can make an Eldar faction, and then we come to make like the Necron faction, and it's like a tenth of the number of data sheets. Like, Kill Team's always got this problem. I mean, sorry, 40k in general has always got this problem when it does things with the real top level factions, because Imperium's massive, Chaos is pretty massive, Eldar's kind of almost there, and then you've got a smattering of the other Xenos races that really aren't that big. You know, you can say Tyranids can be two. They could be the Tyranids, the Hive Fleet, and the Cults. But then you've got Orcs and Necrons and that, and they're just kind of stuck, right? So I just think it was an interesting little side note. Thank you if you've stuck with me for these 5 minutes. We're going to wrap up now, okay? So final thoughts. What do you think about list building in Kill Team? Let me know down below, and do shout at me if I've missed some really important nuance either way, either for or against, because I know from my comments, you know, on the Discord sometimes it feels like it's me versus the world, saying I don't like points, and a lot of people saying we think points should come back. But in the YouTube comments, you know, if you look at my last video that I did, no, the one before that, talking about why Kill Team was a more competitive game, a lot of people were saying, and actually, the lack of list building makes it a much more competitive game than this, that, and the other. So if you look on the YouTube comments, there's more people that tend to agree with my position. On the Discord, it feels like me versus the world sometimes. So do shout at me either way if you think I've missed a particularly important point, right? Do you have an idea of what you'd like them to do? What should they do? What would you like them to do? Slightly different questions for Kill Team 24 when it comes to list building. Because bear in mind as well, we've got some teams in Kill Team 21 that have more list building. Like, if you're playing Inquisition, you've got, you know, Inquisition, especially if they did what I said and got rid of the roster limit, that would actually feel quite a lot like playing Malif out, right as I described it, because you'd have a lot of like different crews almost that you could pick from within your Imperial faction, depending on what you needed to do in your game. Thousand Sons have got a bit more list building, right? You know, I think Inquisition, I'm trying to think, I'm probably missing something really obvious, but those are the two big ones. And of course the new Eldar, the Aspect Warriors have quite a bit of list building as well, don't they, right? So, interesting stuff. Thank you again to all my members, without whose feedback this video simply would not be as good, right? This is a video that is as good as it is and tries to represent a range of diverse viewpoints because of the conversations we've had in the members area on the Discord on this topic many, many times. And if you're not subscribed, please do subscribe. If you haven't already, it really means a lot to me just to get that subscriber number ticking upwards, 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 upwards. Hope you've enjoyed the video. I've enjoyed making it. I think this has been one of my best videos of recent weeks. So hopefully people agree out there in audience land. We shall see. We shall see. All right, thanks everybody. Have a great evening, day, whatever you're doing. And I'll see you again on... Remember the schedule, Phil. I'll see you again on Wednesday for the hobby stream. All right? Cheery bye. Bye-bye. Goodbye.